All right, we'll conclude with Woodstock's 40th is right around the corner.
Yeah.
What's your perspective and best Woodstock memory? And
Well, I don't know. That was a funny thing because Albert and the band had committed to do Woodstock without really knowing what it was going to be. No, this was again the first huge outdoor concert that brought a lot of different people together. So there was, I believe, an interesting element of faith there that it was probably a good thing to do. Bob decided not to do it, so he wasn't even going to attempt to do that. But I remember sitting up in Albert's place in Woodstock, and we were actually listening to the radio reports of the evolution of what was happening. The fact that the New York Thruway was getting all jammed up, that there were scads of people out there, that the weather was going back and forth from good to bad. There were sloppy conditions. It was in a hilly area. I believe maybe somebody had died and been born already, which was a strange thing to hear. But the decision was made, yes, let's go do this. So I actually took the truck and I went down first and drove through the back roads and actually had no problem at all getting into the area. But there you've got this giant stage set up and all these people milling around in this amphitheater area in front of the stage. And then again, it was hilly and there was the pond where people were swimming naked and having a lot of fun, and just an interesting agglomeration of all types of people. And so then most of the musical acts were helicoptered in. There was an area behind the stage that was generally cordoned off where most people couldn't go. And everybody was just kind of hanging out. And there had been originally a schedule of who was going to appear when, but that was trashed pretty early on when certain people either were there or weren't there yet. And so it just became a loosely configured approach to the concert, and everybody was asked to play whenever they could, essentially. We finally went up on stage in the evening on Saturday. It was dark, and 10 years after it was playing just before us. Now, that was a little strange. I remember standing there watching them, and Albert Lee and all of his frenetic energy and this loud, bombastic English blues band just cranking it out. And I thought, whoa, this is going to be interesting. Because there, this wasn't a set up place, so you couldn't really always see a lot out into the crowd. You knew there were these thousands of people out there, but it wasn't actually really obvious. And so every now and then you'd have crowd reaction and all. But on stage it was a different thing. It was almost as if you were just isolated in the nighttime and you were out there almost floating. And so we set up and the band started playing, and one of the things that I remember, especially with Richard singing "I Shall Be Released," is that they sounded so angelic in this outdoors evening setting, and it was just chilling. It was just an extraordinary experience. And even though a lot of the fine-tuning of the whole thing wasn't to everybody's satisfaction, I think the fact that it came off, there was no violence, I think most people had a pretty good and interesting time. And it was another one of those watershed moments in America's cultural history. So it was really pretty spectacular. And I also remember one of the things that we used to take a lot of pride in is that what we did well. And even just driving out of that area when I did, I remember seeing the truck in front of me just slowly kind of drift off and fall into a ditch. And I tried not to do that. We just kept it on the road and kept moving. But the whole Woodstock thing, Joanna Connors was talking about this relative to an article she's writing for the PD. And living up in Woodstock and knowing what was going on there, there is a spirit of Woodstock. And part of that is that the people were really beginning to think for themselves and to figure out how they wanted to live. Off the grid was something that was being talked about then. long before it's been talked about now in this sort of green revolution that they think they're going through. Well, one of the other fascinating things about the Woodstock area is you're up in the Catskills. There's a lot of these wonderful old mountains with all these mythologies floating around. And there were people, there's actually been books published called Woodstock Handmade Houses. There are innumerable, wonderful, experimental, innovative dwellings that were created over time by very interesting people. And that's part of what, to me, was the whole Woodstock experience, is people trying to live off the land to some extent, certainly living outside of the big cities, and being creative about it on any level that they could. So I think that general Woodstock spirit still lives in a lot of people. So
I would think it still lives in William Scheele.
it does. I've run my life in a much different way than I'm sure most people do. I stopped working for other people in real jobs, so to speak, 26 years ago. So I've pretty much invented my life. In 1984, I started the Cleveland Artists Foundation as a nonprofit to honor local artists who have evolved in this region. First, it was pretty much a historic artist focus. Now it includes contemporary people as well. I've had a number of different art galleries. I started a little nonprofit organization back in 2002 called New Cat, which focused more on electronic arts, and we did that in different ways for several years. But this iteration now with Cocoon Arts Club, it's based on the old Cocoon Arts Club idea that was born in 1911 of, again, keeping that artistic, creative spirit always moving forward in some way, not getting stuck in just traditional types of ways of creating art, but always looking at new things. The computer graphics world and electronic arts get the same type of knock in a way that photography did when it first attempted to be recognized as a fine art. There was always this unfortunate reaction that, oh, well, this is made with a machine, it's not really art. Well, the machines are just tools. Brushes and other things are tools too, and you actually really do have to have an interest in learning what a machine can do and how you can manipulate it to become a more creative instrument. And that's the creative element. Machines don't create their own art. It takes human interaction. So I just think that human creativity in the arts are one of the best things that humans have to offer. And it's a wonderful thing to be involved with, and I intend to do it until I drop.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for your time,
And
for
thank
your
you.
efforts and your career.
All
I'm
right.
envious.
Thanks.